We begin with President-elect Joe Biden's plan for the economy, how it will impact your finances, everything from your taxes to your salary. We'll walk you through the pros and cons when it comes to your bottom line. One economist called Biden's plan an example of the president-elect's deep Scranton roots, with labor as a key focus. Biden is expected to push for a large stimulus package, one with more unemployment assistance and direct stimulus. He wants a boost in the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%. And he's promised not to raise taxes on Americans making less than $400,000 a year. The team he hopes will get him there has been called groundbreaking for its diversity. His pick for Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen would be the first woman in the job. Other trailblazers include Neera Tanden as director of the Office of Management and Budget. If confirmed, she will be the first woman of color to lead that department. With me now is Jamie Hopkins. Hopkins is the Director of Retirement Research at Carson Group and a finance professor of practice at Creighton University's Heider College of Business. Jamie, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me on, and yeah, glad to be here.
So from what we know, what do you think is the most profound change that all of what's going to happen will have on our finances, the finances of regular people under President-elect Biden?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually really excited about the team that's been announced here in the last week. Janet Yellen kind of leading that up from the financial side. Somebody that has a lot of respect, both sides of the aisle in D.C., right? Her time at the Fed was very well received. If you go through a lot of the other appointees that President-elect Biden's put out there, you see a really big focus both on inclusion, a diverse team, very well educated, very well qualified, and a lot of focus on the labor world. So for the labor unions, the labor blocs out there that did support President-elect Biden, I think you're going to see a strong policy position there. I do think we'll probably see a little bit of a softening of some of the positions on China. But when we think about big tax policy, big changes, the first thing in front of us is still COVID-19. So it's getting a relief package done. One or two maybe next year, getting some of the just relief and payments out there, some tax breaks to average Americans. I mean, that's really what is, in the first 100 days, the next 6 months, still front and center for this whole team.
And then after that, who do you think will benefit most as we go into 2021 and 2022?
Yeah, I think when you look into 2021, 2022, there's a lot of question marks. Who can, President Biden and his team actually get through the Senate if it is a Republican-controlled Senate? I don't think all of the appointees and nominees that he put out here in the last week will get through. So I think there's a lot of excitement about that team, but there are some that, Republicans have already started voicing concerns about. So depending on the makeup of this team, we'll see slightly different things. I don't expect a ton of widespread tax policy, retirement policy, personal finance policy changes in the first year. Could we get a tax bill done? Maybe, but it would be a lot more limited if we're looking at a Senate, Republican-controlled Senate. So who's going to benefit? I do think student loans, we're going to see some benefits there. However that gets done, I think we're going to see something done. We will see some expanded unemployment benefits out there for those of you that are, struggling to find work, that COVID-19's disrupted. I expect to see some of that. Eventually, we will see some tax cuts for middle America. So I think those are winners. Corporations, honestly, probably are winners too. Even if you look at President-elect Biden's proposed tax policy, the high side would be raising some corporate rates, but nothing like we saw prior to 2017. So even on that side, a possible tax increase there wouldn't be taking us back to where we were. I think that ship sailed a little bit more favorable corporate tax treatment's probably here to stay. And I mentioned China before. I think the trade there being a little harsher on China than we were 3-4 years ago, I think that's here to stay too.
Let's break down some of the specifics. You mentioned Biden courted unions during his campaign. Tell me what his plan for them is going to look like.
Yeah, and I think that'll be interesting what we see from the Department of Labor. Just supporting, labor rights, I think will be a big piece. So that's what I expect year one. See more administration work. So Department of Labor, Treasury Department, right? Work inside of there. Probably less laws being passed, but more working on the administration side for some favorable pieces. And when you go through these list of appointees, I think you see that there, that this is going to be a group that's very labor focused, that's very positive for workers, people without a lot of voice in the current system. That's where I expect. So if you're thinking of, we went kind of top down for the last couple of years, I expect more of a bottom up view here. How do we support the working class of Americans through administrative changes?
Speaking of working class Americans, his plan is also to raise the minimum wage, which will be great for those workers. Might be a challenge, though, for small businesses because they're going to say we can't compete if we have to do that. Does that slow economic growth then?
Yeah, and that's a very mixed area from research, right? So you have individuals and some people on this team that are going to say absolutely increasing access, right, to higher paying jobs at the lower end will actually increase economic activity. It gives people in that kind of lower end where they do get that bump of income, actually the ability to spend and save more. So there's an argument on the other side that that can long-term increase and benefit society. Same thing goes for kind of healthcare, expanding that out. Does it have a cost? Absolutely. But there's a lot of research that says long term that'll actually help improve economic conditions. Now, if I think getting a bill done there, right, broadly for increasing minimum wage will be tough. But one of the things you can do there is actually tie that to some small business tax cuts. So what you're kind of mixing there is, look, we're going to raise some costs, but we're going to give you some back in tax cuts. That's where you could see something along those lines actually get done.
Let's talk about the impact of the pandemic, because you were talking about relief. That would be, first up. But what if something goes wrong along the way with this vaccine? What if the rollout doesn't go as planned and we don't get most people vaccinated by even fall? Then what happens to the rest of this plan?
Yeah, I mean, as I kind of said before, the start here, I mean, look, the vaccine and COVID relief, that is the number one priority today. It's going to be the number one priority in January and February and March. If you can't get a successful rollout of the vaccine, if you can't put good measures in place to slow down the cases that we have, you're not going to get us back to where we were economically. So part of it is protecting Americans. It's dealing with this. But, a successful rollout of the vaccine is probably the single most important thing when you look at the economy next year. And I think that President-elect Biden's team is aware of that. But as you said, could something go wrong in this rollout? Absolutely. So I think picking the right, strategy for who's going to get this vaccine first, how are we going to distribute it, and how are we going to get people on board that the vaccine is safe, it's healthy, that you should use it. I mean, those are big challenges. I've seen some interesting ideas out there, tying some of the COVID relief payments. You could actually pay some waves of people to get the vaccine. That's a very interesting, kind of way to both get money out to help support people during this challenging time and to encourage people to get the vaccine.
Let's talk, fingers crossed, we get through this. Everybody gets the vaccine and we slow the spread of the virus. Then how do you go about raising up the economy again after the hit that it's taken?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done. Some things, I think we've seen some comments from the Fed that have been really good, right? Paying attention to employment first, not worrying about inflation, right away, but setting some long-term projections, keeping rates low for an extended period of time so people can borrow, so they can reinvest. Those are all really positive things. I mentioned before, keeping corporate tax rates low. That is going to allow corporations to do more. If all of a sudden we saw in 2-3 years, right, corporate tax rates jump back up, that could have a slowing effect on recovery and rehiring people. I do think we're going to need to take a hard look at, are we willing to spend again in 21 and 22? And when I say we, I mean the federal government. In 2020, the federal government, right, Democrats, Republicans said, you know what, we are going to put spending to protect the economy, to provide unemployment benefits, to keep things moving as priority number one. We put that over the deficit. all of a sudden, do the Republican budget hawks come back and say, you know what, budget's really important. We can't spend. We're seeing a little bit of that today, right? With this, COVID-19 relief package stalling out now for months with disputes about how to roll out some of the unemployment benefits, some of the pieces that will go to states to help them kind of deal with this crisis. So if that continues to stall, that will have an impact, right? Getting money out into the economy has worked well this year to stabilize at least, right, the market, to get people, disposable income when they're unemployed. That's been really successful this year. You might not like everything that's happened, but that has worked. If we back away from that next year, right, that could be a really big problem. So I think keeping that momentum until things get back to where it was is really important.
I am sure we will talk to you in the new year. Jamie Hopkins with Carson Group. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you so much. Everyone stay safe and healthy.